So I've purchased a big green egg. I've managed the kids' expectations on university, and next year's trip to New South Wales no longer has the word new in it. Was it worth it? The first thing to talk about is delivery. And unless you pay for Big Green Egg's white glove delivery service, you're going to have to build your table or stand if you get one with it, and also your big green egg. I had the classic 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. delivery slot. I didn't get a call the night before to give me like a 2-hour window or in the morning of that delivery. So by about lunchtime, I phoned up Big Green Egg to find out what was going on. And this is where something quite strange happened. No one said your call is important to us. Nobody said we're experiencing high call volumes right now or anything like that. Press 1 for this, 2 for that. I dialed the number, and then on the second ring, like 1996, a man answered the phone, a real man. And I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared to phone somebody and then just pick up the phone and start talking to me. But he was excellent. He said he would get me a delivery slot. I should have had one. He called me back. He said he would call me back, and he did call me back. And then he said, yeah, they'll be there in an hour. Sorry you didn't get your slots. He basically did exactly what he said he was going to do, which in this day and age is not a level of service I'm quite used to. However, delivery was interesting. So the driver couldn't use his tail lift because a collection he'd put on earlier had collapsed and fallen apart in the back of his van. He said he could take it off the side if I helped. And this was my first mistake, because I assumed he knew how strong he was. He had some idea how strong I was and how much a big green egg and a mahogany table weighed. I don't think he had this information. Kids, as the old saying goes, never assume. So first off was the mahogany table, which is about as heavy as it looks. And we manhandled it through my garden gate, at which point he dropped his end, which, I mean, I can't blame him. It was really heavy. And I've now got a little dent in the back of the table to remember the whole experience by for the rest of the time I own this big egg. And then there was the egg itself. So I asked him if he knew how heavy it was. Bearing in mind how much we'd struggled with the table, I said, do you know how much this weighs? And he looked and he said no, but he felt confident. I felt less confident. So we tried to get it off the van, and then when he got to taking the weight, his side, unfortunately, immediately dropped it. So all in all, I mean, health and safety out the window here. We managed to manhandle it all in, but it is just so heavy. This and also this. Normally when things say it's a 2-person job, you can normally get by with one. No, this is 100% a 2-person job. Building the table was easy. If there were instructions, we didn't see them in the box, but it was straightforward, just heavy, as I've mentioned. It took 10 minutes to unpack and 20 minutes to build. The table is such a high quality piece of furniture. It was a real pleasure to put together. The egg was just a case of following the video instructions, and it was also quite easy to build. The biggest thing to consider with all of this, as I mentioned, is weight. It really does take 2 people to put this stuff together and get it all in place. And my advice would be, if you do have the ability to build this yourself, if you can build an IKEA wardrobe, you can put this stuff together, then put it together yourself. The reason being is then you will really know your oven going forward. And if you have to replace any parts or make any adjustments, you will know exactly what you're doing. But most importantly, how does it cook? So the first cook was chicken. Early days, but I started with a spatchcock chicken, and I did exactly the same thing when I cooked it on the Kamado Joe Jr. It wasn't a side-by-side comparison, but the big green egg did give me crispier skin, and it was a really moist bird. Where the Kamado Joe Jr. was 9.5 out of 10, I'm gonna say the big green egg was 10 out of 10. I couldn't see a way to improve this chicken and would have been very happy to pay for it if I was in a restaurant. The next thing I cooked was chicken tikka. I like to meal prep, so cooked some chicken tikka for the next few lunches. I also bought the expander, meaning I could do 90% of the cook indirectly and then directly at the end. These were truly delicious. And once again, if I'd have got these in a restaurant, I would have been very happy with them. The next thing I cooked was burgers. I did the opposite here. So I cooked these directly over the coals and then used the indirect side as like a warming area. And once again, we bought high quality burgers. These came together really well. And it does make it difficult to go to restaurants now, because these burgers were absolutely exceptionally nice to eat. The next thing I cooked was a Thor's hammer. I absolutely love the way they look. I think they look really cool when you're barbecuing them. A fairly straightforward, low and slow. It was tasty enough, but when it comes to effort versus reward, I don't think it's a nice enough cut really. I think I prefer something like a pulled pork or even a brisket. My wife also cooked a very tasty steak with mac and cheese. She used indirect and direct cooking and was really happy with the results, and she actually found the oven a pleasure to use. I let it rest in a Yeti that I've also purchased. This also worked really well at keeping the kidney fresh that I'd had to sell to be able to buy the Yeti. But anyway, the pulled pork was really good. It was excellent. I could could have cooked it for say 20 minutes longer, but it had taken on some really lovely smoke. It shredded well, and most importantly, was delicious. So is it worth it? Is it worth the big price tag? Well, full disclosure, about 6 weeks ago, I bought this, a Kamado Joe Jr. And people generally like my hot and fast cooks and my low and slow cooks. But what I noticed when I bought this was people said it raised my game, and the food genuinely went from tasting good to really good. However, this is quite a small oven, so I kind of needed something bigger, or wanted something bigger, where this works fantastically for midweek cooks. If I want to do meal prepping, or if we've got people over, something this size is actually a lot more practical. So why didn't I get a Kamado Joe, the big Kamado Joe? That's a good question. And it all comes down to this. So in the UK, and this is different in different markets, I think, a Kamado Joe in the UK is generally cheaper than the equivalent Big Green Egg by a few hundred. However, with Big Green Egg, you can buy these really nice tables. I've got this, the mahogany one. My friend's got the eucalyptus one on wheels, which he loves. There is an abundance of stations and tables and stands you can get for this. However, if I was to buy this size version of a Kamado Joe, it leaves me with a dilemma. I want the garden to look good. This is as much a garden as it is an outdoor kitchen. I think this looks fantastic. For me to get the same effect with a Kamado Joe oven, I'd have to either buy an outdoor kitchen unit, which would kind of take me into the same price as this, or risk something like Etsy to try and buy a table like this. I mean, I'm not really prepared to take that risk, or hire a carpenter, which would probably push this to be more expensive. So the two options that I'd probably go with would be to hire a local carpenter, or to buy an outdoor kitchen units to kind of go around this. And both those options with a Kamado Joe means this is probably a slightly cheaper option for me. So is this a hype job, or is this worth the money? It's a tough question, and I think it depends on your budget, because I think this is exceptionally good. I also think it's very expensive. Everything you see before you hear, plus the expander rack, which isn't in there, was around the £3,000 mark. That is an awful lot of money for what you're seeing before you. However, when you look at the prices of outdoor kitchens, this home high-end luxury cooking market seems to have exploded over the last few years, and the costs of things are just a little bit out there. However, this does come with the most amazing warranty. The quality of this, and I'm not comparing it to the Kamado Joe at all, the quality of the Big Green Egg, I would say, is second to none. Out of all the equipment I've bought lately for the channel, I feel like this is a level above when it comes to quality, warranty, and when people say they feel like they will pass their Big Green Eggs on to their kids, I can kind of see that. So yes, I think it's excellent. I'm pleased I've got it, and I can see it staying here as an addition to this outdoor kitchen that we're building for a very, very long time, if not forever.